Eve Ensler is a Tony Award-winning playwright. She's a performer and an activist. Her newest book, In the Body of the World, was released in 2013 to worldwide acclaim. Eve, we salute your incredible courage, your fearless outrage, your powerful battle with adversity, and the sheer magnificence of your being. Thank you for honoring FIGO with your presence and presenting the inaugural lecture for Professor Mahmoud Fathalla, who, like you, had the insight to see how modern and traditional societies have violated the feminine in us all. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Eve Ensler in the Body of the World.
Greetings, and thank you so much, Lynette, for your incredible words and for inviting me here and for all your support to make that happen. I'm utterly honored and privileged and moved to be standing in front of you all today. Grateful to be speaking to a group of people that are literally saving people's lives, who devote their efforts and beings to caring for others, particularly women, newborns, and babies. And I want to say how grateful I am to be alive today. Over 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3/4 uterine cancer. Within 4 days of my diagnosis, I was in 9-hour surgery, where I lost 7 organs, 70 nodes. I went through a profound and very difficult 9 months of surgery, infections, chemo, more surgery, which turned out to be one of, if not the central transformative experience of my life. And I am very grateful today to be cancer-free over 5 years and feeling extremely, extremely well. Thank you. I want to just give a shout out to my doctors because I love them. Dr. Deborah Rhodes, Sean Dowdy, and Eric Dozwa at the Mayo Clinic, and Dr. Louis Katz and Ilan Shapiro from Beth Israel Hospital. These were my primary doctors, surgeons, and oncologists, and without them, I simply wouldn't be here today. But I also want to thank the host of nurses, healers, friends, and families who put this Humpty Dumpty back together again. As you all know well, the illness of one person impacts the entire community, but it is an entire community which heals a patient. I know you're all wondering, okay, what on earth is the playwright of the Vagina Monologues doing here talking to you today? Well, I know a bit about vaginas. I've been talking about them, performing them, speaking about them, listening to them for about 20 years. We could compare notes, but that's not why I'm here today. This is not a medical talk per se. I'm not a doctor, an expert in medicine. But I must say that most of my life, I have been obsessed with the body, with women's body, with women having agency over their bodies, with women knowing their bodies, seeing their bodies, being of their bodies. And as I say in my memoir, which I'm going to read sections from today, and it's a memoir that really looks at the journey of my cancer and what evolved in me both physically, spiritually, and psychologically while I was simultaneously involved with my sisters in the Congo, in Bukavu, where we were building a revolutionary center for women who have suffered some of the worst atrocities of war on their bodies. And I begin the memoir saying, a mother's body against a child's body makes a place. It says, you are here. Without this body against your body, there is no place. I envy people who miss their mother, or miss a place, or know something called home. The absence of a body against my body created a gap, a hole, a hunger. This hunger determined my life. I have been exiled from my body. I was ejected at a very young age and I got lost. I did not have a baby. I have been afraid of trees. I have felt the earth as my enemy. I did not live in the forest. I lived in the concrete city where I could not see the sky or sunset or stars. I moved at the pace of engines and it was faster than my own breath. I became a stranger to myself and to the rhythms of the earth. I aggrandized my alien identity and wore black and felt superior. My body was a burden. I saw it as something that unfortunately had to be maintained. I had little patience for its needs. The absence of body against my body made attachment abstract, made my own body dislocated and unable to rest or settle. A body pressed against your body is the beginning of nest. I grew up not in a home, but in a kind of free fall of anger and violence that led to a life of constant moving, of leaving and falling. For years, I have been trying to find my way back to my body and to the earth. I guess you could say it has been my central preoccupation. Although I have felt pleasure in both the earth and my body, it has been more as a visitor than as an inhabitant. I have tried various routes to get back: promiscuity, anorexia, performance art. I've spent time by the Adriatic and in the green Vermont mountains, but always I felt estranged, just as I was estranged from my own mother. I was in awe of her beauty, but could not find my way in. Her breasts were not the breasts that fed me. Everyone admired her in her tight tops and her leggings. One gawked at my mother. One desired my mother. And so I gawked and desired the earth, and I despised my own body, which was not her body. A body that I had been forced to evacuate when my father incested me, invaded me, and violated me. As I had no reference point for my body, I began to ask other women about their bodies, in particular their vaginas, as I sensed then that vaginas were important. This led me to writing the Vagina Monologues, which then led me to talking incessantly and obsessively about vaginas. I did this in front of many strangers. As a result of me talking so much about vaginas, women started telling me stories about their bodies. I crisscrossed the earth in planes, trains, and jeeps. I was hungry for the stories of other women who had experienced violence and suffering. These women and girls had also become exiled from their bodies, and they too were desperate for a way home. I have been to over 70 countries. I have heard about women being cut in Kenya and Egypt. I've heard about women being molested in their beds, flogged in their burqas, acid burned in their kitchens, left for dead in parking lots. I've been to Jalalabad, Juarez, Sarajevo, Alabama, Port-au-Prince, Peshawar, Pristina. I've spent time in refugee camps, in burned-out buildings and backyards, in dark rooms where women whispered their stories by flashlights. Women showed me their ankle lashes, melted faces, scars on their bodies from knives and cigarette burns. Some could no longer walk or have sex. Some became quiet and disappeared. Other women became driven machines like me. Cancer threw me through the window of my disassociation into the center of my body's crisis. My body was no longer an abstraction. There were people cutting into it, and tubes coming out of it, and bags and catheters draining it, and needles bruising it and making it bleed. I was blood and poop and pee and pus. I was burning and nauseous and feverish and weak. I was of the body, in the body. I was finally body, body, body. Cancer, a disease of pathologically dividing cells, burned away the walls of my separateness, ironically, and landed me in my body. Cancer was an alchemist, an agent of change. Don't get me wrong, I'm no apologist for cancer. I am fully aware of the agony of this disease. I appreciate every step that has occurred in medicine that has enabled me to be standing here right now. I wake up every day and I run my hand over my torso-length scar, and I'm in awe that I had doctors and surgeons who were able to remove this disease from my body. And I am humbled that I got to live where there are CAT scan machines, because I believe in all of the Congo there is one, or where there is chemotherapy, because in the Congo there is no diagnosis for most women and there is no chemotherapy. I'm awed that I had insurance that could pay. Absolutely none of these things are given for most of the people in the world. And I am in awe that in 2012, and not 20 years ago even, I probably would not have been alive and standing here when I was then 57. As I said, I'm not an expert. Everything I know comes from direct experience. But I am one who actually trusts direct experience. It's real, it's lived, and it lives in the body. So this morning, I'm going to share with you my journey through cancer, and I'm going to share with you what made better my medical experience and what weakened it. I'm going to share with you how the body, like the earth, is a holistic organism, and how when we treat part of the body as if it were separate from the heart or the brain, which holds memory, or even if we treat the body as a body and not the holder of trauma and pain, we put obstacles in the path of healing, and sometimes we can actually make patients worse. During my cancer journey, I learned a lot about stomas, uteruses, rectums, fistulas, colostomy bags, and infections. Honestly, probably more than I wanted to learn. But I also learned about how care shapes and shifts how the body heals or doesn't, how chemo can be a transformative experience, how kindness can make a huge difference, and how doctors or a surgeon's attitude or faith or energy can actually reshape the direction and energy of our cells. I think artists and scientists or medical people have been taught that our worlds are separate, that we exist in completely different realms. To some degree, we are suspicious of each other or even distrustful. But I think we have a lot to offer each other. In the same way we have divided up our worlds, science over here, art over here, we have done this to the body. But I learned through cancer that the body is a genius, holistic organism. And everything that touches it, from a cold scalpel to a catheter, to a needle popped into a steely port, to a tone in a doctor's voice, or a gentle or rough touch from a nurse, impacts our healing and survival. I have spent my life over the last 20 years working probably 12 hours a day, working to end violence against women. I know that 1 out of 3 women on this planet will be raped or violated in her lifetime, and that's a World Health Organization and a UN statistic. What this means is that every woman patient is either a survivor of primary or secondary trauma before she comes in to see us. Either she has been abused herself, witnessed to abuse, or worried about abuse. I will go as far to say that we have no idea yet what the relationship is between trauma and illness in women, or if in fact, in the end, we will discover they are one and the same. What this means is that every woman that comes in with an illness must be treated as if she were traumatized. And what this means is that how we talk to patients, how we touch them, how we facilitate treatments, the questions we ask them about their history, the amount of preparation we give them and time to digest, the way we actually do the procedures, our sensitivity to their worry, terror, anxiety, will in fact determine the outcome of our care. If in fact trauma forces the patient to leave her body, to disassociate, to shut down, to disregard the body, and I can speak for myself, I knew months and months in advance of going in for treatment that something was wrong with me, but because of my own disassociation, I didn't pay attention to it. We know that this disassociation must be a major source of illness. When we leave our bodies, we no longer feel them or protect them. We no longer heed their warnings or fight to build immunity. So how we treat patients must take into consideration how we as healers, as part of our medicine, help women come back into their bodies. And I want to just read, I'm going to read little scans. The book is built on CAT scans because I became obsessed with CAT scans throughout my treatment. I want to read this early section called Dr. Handsome. The most handsome doctor in the world comes in to examine my rear end. What else, of course? I'm obviously shell-shocked. I lie on the table, my underpants around my ankles, and I think, this is it. This is what the end of the world looks like. The most handsome man in the world knowing I have some horrible tumor inside my colon or rectum or uterus, and he has to feel it. I've already died from the humiliation and terror that are now merged in a cocktail of sweat and nausea. And I am actually curled up on the table, hoping he will not see me, that I will disappear. And at the same time, all I want is for him to see me and for this to be part of what it means to be human. And at that moment, Dr. Handsome walks from one side of the examining table, where he is facing my back and naked rear end, around to the other side, and looks me in the eyes and says, "Before we begin, I want you to know how much I admire you and all you have done in this world for women, and all you have written, and all the ways you have made the world better. It's a privilege to care for you, and I will do my very best." I felt like a little dog shaking, picked up by a stranger in the rain. And in this moment, it made everything that followed in the next days bearable. And I know I can trust him with my life and my body. Doctors never believe how simple it is to give patients dignity. It takes a sentence. It takes a short walk around the table. The body holds memories and abuse in cellular membranes. And I can't say how strongly I know this and believe this. I want to just read a little section because when I was diagnosed, it happened very suddenly, and I went to the Mayo Clinic where I had to fly to. And I had a few hours on the plane where I was trying to just wrap my head around the fact that I had a tumor the size of a mango in my uterus, or wherever. They didn't even know where it was at that point. And I had this vision of what was in my uterus and what was in my tumor. I don't tell them they're removing what seems like a tumor, but is really a flesh monument inside me. Huge and round, a taut ball of cellular yarn spun out of the stories of women, made of tears, silent screams, rocking torsos, and the particular loneliness of violence. A flesh creature birthed out of the secrets of brutality. Each blood vessel a ribbon of story. My body has been sculpting this tumor for years, molding the pieces of pain, the clay residue of memories. It is a huge work, and it has taken everything. Everywhere we touch in a woman is a possible minefield, and everything we do is a possible re-triggering of her trauma. I will give you an example. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse from my father. As a result of his early invasions at a young age, I had chronic bladder infections that woke me up at night, peeing in my bed, wrestling with huge pain. Having a catheter inserted in my bladder after my surgery was an utterly terrifying experience, bringing back the onslaught of those dark nights and the memory of that abuse. I had no idea before surgery what to expect after the surgery, but I am suggesting that if someone had prepared me for what followed, I could have prepared myself psychologically for the potential re-triggering of those memories and pain. If we look at the whole structure and hierarchy of doctor-patient relationship, it is a total repeat of abuse, particularly childhood sexual abuse. A person with authority and one's supposed best intentions and interests has total control and designs over your body. Sickness makes us, the patient, vulnerable, reduces us to a childlike state. We become terrified, immobilized, unable to question authority. Gratitude for our care silences our deepest anxieties and concerns. A patient is afraid to challenge a surgeon or doctors, ask questions, reveal fears, as she doesn't want him or her to think she is not grateful or trusting, doesn't want to offend, doesn't want to lose the doctor. The surgeon enters your body in a twilight stage. You are half drugged or fully drugged like you were once half asleep when your perpetrator entered your room. The surgeon literally enters you, which in the memory mind of the body is comparable to being entered as a child. I think of the word invasive procedures, invasive operations, all of these triggering the repetitive trauma of being invaded in some way at some time against your will. Childhood sexual abuse actually feels like you are being operated on, that someone has come to invade you and change you and manipulate you and take something away. Another piece to this is that abuse happens quickly, without warning or preparation. It happens without your consent as a woman or participation. It robs you of agency and control. In this sense, the best experiences I had during my cancer involved careful conversations, preparations, and explanations. Conversations, preparations, explanations. Experiences that made me part of the experience and gave me agency over what was about to occur. Slow entry and approach. A sense that the doctor or oncologist was with me and moving not to get the job done, but to treat my body in a way that would make me better, not just in the long term, but with the awareness that how the actual treatment was being done was a part or not a part of my healing. The best experience was when the doctor or the administrator of chemo or nurse was asking questions, encouraging me to ask questions, explaining what they were doing, and allowing me to move with them. The worst experiences were when I felt as though the doctor didn't see me at all, that my body was just a site for a job, that my pain, and sometimes even annoyance, that my pain or anxiety was to be overrun or ignored in getting to the goal, or in one case at a hospital that I finally left, my pain inspired the doctor to behave in what felt almost sadistic ways. If a patient is screaming, for example, it might be an indication that the caretaker would stop and investigate how to do a procedure better. The best cases were when the hierarchy between doctor, oncologist dissolved and care felt like a collaborative experience, not something that was being done to me. I realize to some degree medical professionals, probably to a large degree, are taught to be objective and distanced in their care, not to become emotionally involved with their patients, to treat the body. But I would share that the most healing experiences I had were with the most empathetic doctors, surgeons, and the most difficult and disturbing where I couldn't find the heart of the doctor. I know, I can only imagine how difficult it is to be someone in the healing profession and to give your all and to lose patients. I can imagine the overwhelm from witnessing endless illness and distress. I can see how the need to protect oneself from this loss does over time create a wall of distance and separation. For many survivors, and I remind you that 1 out of 3 women are survivors, this wall that gets put up can feel like the same impenetrable wall of our perpetrator, who did whatever they wanted to us without feeling mercy or empathy for our screams or reactions. I want to tell you a story. It's about a surgeon who is one of the surgeons responsible for saving my life. I share this as this wonderful surgeon and I experienced a profound journey. We both learned things about ourselves, and I believe we both changed. My process was surgery, then I had a huge infection, then I had chemo, and then more surgery to do the takedown of the stoma and the bag. I had been through a really rough time during my infection where I lost 30 pounds, and it went on for a very long time, and then chemo was really quite arduous. I had not seen my surgeon for months after chemo, and when I returned, I was feeling really strong and really positive, as my CI-125 was a 3, and the CAT scan had shown my body was clean and well. I couldn't wait to see my surgeon so we could celebrate this together. It was, after all, our joint victory. Upon seeing him, I realized he was having none of it. He was very cold, and he told me it was early, we couldn't even begin to think about a cure, that it could come back, and if it did, it would come back in my vagina, and we would need to think about radiating my vagina. I was like, radiating my vagina? That will not happen. To say I was crestfallen is putting it mildly. I went into a total depression and spin. I had worked so hard all those months to get through that terrible infections and chemo, and I needed this moment to be a moment of relief and celebration. I needed positive, strong energy and encouragement. What it felt like was so familiar. I would never do it well enough. I would never get it right. Everything was an illusion, and I was a failure, and I was clearly going to die after all. This had a terrible impact on the takedown surgery, as my mental state plummeted, and I had no will or energy to recover. I got very, very, very sick after the takedown, much more sick than I should have gotten. I vomited for 5 days straight, and I really felt as if I was going to die. I felt like the surgeon who had saved me had turned on me at a critical moment. I was so conflicted. How could I be angry at someone who had saved my life? How could I cross the divide of God, the surgeon, and me, the patient? I gathered my strength, and I wrote him a letter expressing first my gratitude, and then my anger and disturbance. I told him at the moment of my return, I needed him to be my enthusiastic ally. I needed him to believe and let me know he believed I would get better. I needed this essential energy of healing from the person who was so deeply intimate with my body. This opened a glorious dialogue between us. At first, it was hard and bumpy, but ultimately transformative. It turned out that he felt he could not and would not give his patients false hope, as he did not want to disappoint them. I explained that at the moment of my return, it was a critical moment in my healing. My whole system was turning its energy force and thinking to a belief that I was going to live. This was signaling to all kinds of things in my cells and organs and blood, which was in turn creating a vitalizing physical energy. I explained that his doubt and his refusal to believe in my full recovery threw up a huge wall and blocked this energy. We ended up meeting, and I must say my doctor, my surgeon, was one of the surgeons who came to the Congo. And as I returned to the Congo after my cancer, he ended up operating with Dr. Denis Mukwege at Panzi Hospital on many of the women who had suffered some of the terrible things as a result of sexual violence. But we were in the Congo. We would meet each night, and we would talk deeply. And I was so moved by his willingness to investigate why he could not meet me with total faith or full energy in that moment. He had lost patience and suffered severe sorrow and disappointment. He did not want to open himself up to that again. But I, as his patient, and I believe once someone enters your body, there is a deep connection and intimacy we cannot underestimate. I needed him to open himself and believe in me with me. The truth is, nothing would be lost. Whether he believed or didn't believe, gave me faith or didn't give me faith, if I got sick again, I would be disappointed. But if he took the leap and believed with me, the energy that would be released, the joy, the accomplishment in that moment would radically escalate my energetic renewal. We have no idea how much the mind impacts the body, how much a belief in our recovery determines our recovery, how much the faith of our surgeons and doctors and friends contributes to this renewal. I think it is crucial, too, and I see this now, that doctors, and I particularly see this with women and men who are on the front lines of caring for women in war zones, who are caring for women in some of the most difficult situations of sexual violence, but I see this in every aspect of care with doctors. We have to find ways to process sorrow and losses and disappointments so that they do not need to build, doctors and caretakers don't need to build walls and distances and project their fears onto their patients. Caretakers are suffering secondary trauma all the time, and they need ways to emotionally transform both their doubt and despair. They need to be taken care of and treated as well. Recently, my surgeon wrote me about a patient of his who had just reached the 5-year mark from uterine cancer recovery. And she was clean and well, and he told me he was able to truly celebrate this victory with her and also with himself. I think victories are crucial in the process of recovery for both doctors, oncologists, patients, and I think timing and when you tell people things is everything. I want to switch now and talk about psychological frames we create to enter medical experiences and how those frames can directly impact outcomes. I think it would be wonderful if we could spend real time reimagining procedures and present them to patients in ways that evoke creativity, self-agency, transformation, rather than dread, passivity, and despair. And I think this is where the arts and medicine could come together. I think how we frame things has a direct impact on outcomes, and I would like to suggest a new frame for chemotherapy that actually worked for me. After surgery and after I had had the infections, I was told that I needed to do chemotherapy as a preventative treatment and measure. And I have to tell you, I was utterly terrified of chemotherapy. I am not good with poison in my body. I'm not good with vomiting. I can go down the list. And I had said that I wasn't going to do it. And one day, out of the blue, an ex-therapist of mine, a woman who's actually quite brilliant in the area of trauma and healing and recovery psychologically. She just arrived at my place in New York, and I'm going to read you what happened. Then Sue arrives. She has not been my therapist for many years. She heard from a friend that I had cancer and is giving me free sessions as a gift. I can hardly believe it. I can tell she's pretty shocked to see me. I'm super skinny and wobbly with a buzz cut. I do not think I can do the chemo. I'm not good with things in my body. I don't do well. I've never been a bulimic. I remind her I'm totally claustrophobic. I tell her I'm afraid of having poison inside me. And then she does what I call a Sue. She gives me back the same information I'm giving her with a genius spin, a way of seeing things that immediately and spontaneously unlocks my neurosis. In this case, she gives me a way to frame the entire chemo experience. She says, the chemo is not for you. It's for the cancer, for all the past crimes. It's for your father. It's for the rapists. It's for the perpetrators. You're going to poison them now, and they are never coming back. Chemo will purge the badness that was projected onto you, but never yours. I have total faith in your resilience and the magical capacities of your body and soul for healing. Your job is to welcome the chemo as an empathetic warrior, which is coming in to rescue your innocence by killing off the perpetrator who got inside you. You have many bodies. New ones will be born out of this transformational time of love and care. When you feel nauseous or terrible, just imagine how hard the chemo is fighting on your behalf and on behalf of women's bodies, restoring wholeness, innocence, peace. Welcome the chemo as an empathetic warrior. I cannot tell you how excited I was to go to chemo. I actually look forward to every session, and I would tell you, as the Taxol and the carboplatin entered me, I would close my eyes and imagine this burning golden fluid going into the deepest places in my soul and body and being. I would focus on one particular event or story or an experience that had caused me great pain, and I would imagine the chemo burning it away. I did this for months. I had Sue's support each week, and I had spiritual icons. I had Kali by my side, the dark goddess of time and change, power, creation, preservation, and destruction. And I had Tara, the goddess of compassion, to get me through. And at the end of my chemo, I can honestly tell you that 80% of my demons were gone, and they have never come back. Chemo takes you to the edge, and the edge is where the deepest transformation can take place. What if we stopped calling it chemo, but called it transformation therapy? What if we had guides and therapists and healers in our transformation suites? What if we developed a whole new modality and discovered that chemo could, in fact, be a much deeper healing process than we ever dreamed? What if we approached it as a process of burning away trauma and intentionally used the process to clean out the core of our psychological, spiritual, and physical wounds? Perhaps it is more than one should ask or expect, but I think everything we do in this world with each other, anywhere, is an opportunity to heal past wounds, create new spaces of healing, and love and transform human consciousness so that we might, as a species and planet, not only survive, but thrive in all ways. This can be enacted in a simple meeting in an elevator with a stranger or with a loved one in crisis. But when a woman is sick, when she is porous, when she is vulnerable, that is a critical time where her wounded being, her traumatized system, can either be enlightened or further traumatized. I'm here today because I believe every one of you is of deepest service and love. But sadly, we are contained and caught within patriarchal, capitalist systems of medicine that prohibit our deepest instincts and openness. And I've seen this from hospitals in every part of the world and clinics where the best intentions of caretakers are stalled and prevented by the structures and systems, whether they be about turning the patients out, getting the numbers, getting the data, whatever it is. Systems that train us to believe that objectivity is possible and then desirable. Train us not to be emotionally involved with our patients, even though we are already, by our beautiful natures, already involved. Train us to protect ourselves, which is a code for shutting down, rather than creating methods where we can open ourselves and allow energy and vitality and faith and humor and joy and connection to run deep. I'm standing here today because of amazing medical skill and brilliant doctors. That's a fact. But I'm also here because of love. And both are powerful and crucial healers and catalysts for the other. How do we make medicine a practice of love? How do we lift our fear and dance in both worlds? How do we treat trauma as a disease and disease as trauma? How do we create a medicine for women who have been undone, unseen, invaded, raped, battered, terrorized, and silenced, that isn't a repeat of their past, but a creation of the new world inside and out? The answer is love. I want to close with a piece from the book, and I know there are nurses here, and I want to do a huge shout out for nurses. You know, I was thinking of the panel earlier where the discussion was about how do we treat our patients in more holistic, non-siloed ways. And I think one of the things that neoliberal capitalism does, unfortunately, is it silos everything because it then creates competing growth units out of just about everything it can. And I think one of the things I've learned is that we can't treat violence against women, for example, without looking at economic realities, without looking at climate change, without looking at racism, without looking at the history of colonialism, it's impossible to address any of this without a holistic framework. But this applies to the body as well. We can't treat the body as if the uterus were here and the brain were here and the heart were here and the spirit were someplace else. And this also applies to medicine as well. I see the way nurses get treated in hospital by doctors. They're dismissed. They're not honored. They're not treated and seen as equal participants and partners in the process. I see how nurses, like mothers, like women, end up on the front lines doing most of the very detailed everyday work, and they don't get seen and acknowledged and paid for and lifted. So I'm going to do this piece for everyone in this room, of course, for your amazing work, but I'm also going to do it for nurses, because I will tell you that nurses were the primary people and beings that got me better. Their ongoing care, they're never making me feel humiliated by my acts of my body, which I had no control over, their humor, their love, their faith in me. And all the nurses here, I'm sending you the hugest amount of love. It's called Farting for Cindy. Toast and Lou, my sister, circle my bed as if their quiet moving back and forth will stimulate my bowels. The takedown is over and the bag is gone. Everything is now about my bowels, my ability to control and direct my bowels and our bowels. I'm on the fart floor, or the colon post-operation floor, or the floor of missing bags. We were there, a tribe of us, waiting to fart and poop. I meet them in the hall, the middle-aged, overweight male executive, followed by his exhausted wife, the older, perfectly made-up, buxom blonde woman with a younger, skinny man following in her wake of perfume. There's a group of us, walking and walking, as we are told that walking makes you fart, makes you want to poop. I see others in the room, still bedridden, and sometimes I see others leaving, going home, others who have clearly pooped their way back into the world. It is terrifying not being able to poop or fart. It's like shit claustrophobia. Everything is stuck inside you, and there's no way it will ever get out, and you just imagine yourself eventually exploding. I was honestly scared. Scared the operation had failed, scared nothing would ever work again and I would need another bag. I could tell Lou and Toast were scared too. They were on fart alert. Each morning they would arrive with great anticipation and I would shake my head. No farts, not even a shot of wind. It was going on too long. Then they sent me Cindy, the fart deliverer. She went room to room. She was very large, determined, and strong. The first time she came, she told me, "Eve, farts are music to my ears. I welcome farts. That's why I'm here. Do not be embarrassed. Give me your fart." I tried to imagine them saying something like this in Africa or in Europe. It was so American somehow. Give me your tired, your poor, your farts. Cindy knew all kinds of positions and tricks, places to press and pull. I surrendered to her big hands as she lifted and turned me about. I could feel she was gifted, but my new redirected colon with shallow homemade rectum was having none of it. Cindy, fart massager, came every day at 3 p.m. I tried to imagine her life, bringing down the fart, finding the perfect place or the exact right moment when the colon relaxed and the newly built body released. I honestly think it was my need to please Cindy that brought on my first slight pass of gas. It was her fourth visit, and I could tell she was depressed. She took her work seriously. Cindy was a volunteer. The fact that she didn't get paid for her fart work escalated my need to please her. If anything has kept my faith in humans, it is not the grand inventors or visionary poets or brain surgeons or even the Gandhis of this world. It is the Cindys, the quiet, invisible, often underpaid or unpaid, Cindys who get up every morning after feeding families and taking care of infirm parents, finding their way on snowy country roads or polluted freeways or non-existent roads to hospitals or old age homes or mental institutions or orphanages. Frequently unacknowledged, they take care of shrinking AIDS babies and privileged children and the mean, sick, and depraved. Cindys who weave an invisible web of care through lonely mansions of Beverly Hills and emergency wards and mammogram clinics and infusion suites. As I lay there, Cindy had worked up a sweat. She was gently pressing my lower abdomen. When the world is right, it will be the unpaid and unsung people like Cindy who will be the honored ones, the ones who get paid the most, and they will sit at the big table. When the world is white, it will be these invisible people who we see and cherish. I open my eyes and I see Cindy's face, and I know she is only here to help me get better. She has no other reason or agenda. She is so concentrated and so kind. I get seriously choked up, and this distracts me. And suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a little pop, a breaking of what is undeniably a fart. Thank you very much.